without further ado, thank you, Christy, for coming.
Perfect.
Welcome to CC.
I'm glad I'm here.
All right.
Thank you so much. What we're going to do today is, again, I'm Christy Buck, and I'm the executive director of a local foundation that is working with students, that's from elementary, high school, and middle school, to understand that mental health is one of the number one things in your whole health triangle that is the most important aspect. Also, we are trying to get awareness out there about the fact of how you treat people actually has an effect on how they think, how they act, and how they feel. So this is going to be a lot of information about mental health, and actually that ties directly into bullying, and that's why we're here today. So, Kat is bringing up the Prezi, and, okay, so, okay, the background of the MHF was actually we were created back in 1990, and our goal is to reduce stigma, and the big thing that we're doing is to increase awareness. What we know is that our mission is to, in order to ensure that every individual is supported in their journey to a full, healthy life, we educate and build awareness throughout the community about suicide prevention and other challenges to good mental health. Our vision is to create and inspire communities in which challenges to good mental health are recognized, understood, accepted, and treated. And so what we're doing today is we're going to be talking about bullying. And what we know is that with bullying, we need to recognize that bullying is everywhere. We need to understand the impact that bullying can have on mental health, and that's what we're going to keep going back to, is the importance of understanding as teachers and educators how mental health is affected. We need to accept the responsibility to make a change, and this is in a whole climate in schools. When you're in a school, it takes the entire community to accept the challenge to change behavior. Nothing will happen if everybody is not engaged. And then treat everyone with dignity and respect. So, what is bullying? And what we know what bullying is that a person is being bullied when he or she is exposed repeatedly and over time to negative actions on the part of one or more other persons. That is bullying. So a lot of times incidents happen in school, and right now it's the buzzword. And we know that there's legislation out there. We're going to talk about that in a minute, and we're going to talk about why that was created. We know that all schools have been called to action to have bully policies in place. And so it's no longer just going up and saying, don't bully. It's understanding how someone is really affected by this. So again, repeated occurrences, intentional, repeated occurrences, and the power differential between the victim and the bully. So, why is bullying on the rise? And what we know is that my examples out there are, yes, we have heard that cyberbullying is on the rise because so many kids are so exposed to so many different ways of social media. So we can have Facebook, we can have Twitter is the hottest new thing for every teenager and college student. They're watching everybody on Twitter. I like to use Facebook. I like to use American Idol as an example, as a media way that we see bullying at its highest example too. And so what can happen on that show is the way Simon can treat someone, and usually they always have somebody replacing Simon. I don't know who's going to do it this season because I haven't tuned in yet, but somebody on there will be the bully. Now, can the victims, the people that are the recipients of his actions, can they have an influence on how that person feels? Yes. But when kids are watching it, they are watching someone national, all over TV, making millions of dollars, getting paid to be a bully. So again, kids are exposed to these things. So this is a great slide in where we're going to go from here, and this is to show you that what bullying looks like. So in normal circumstances, you have one person who is the bully in the group, one person who is the victim, And then they're surrounded by all these other people who are called the bystanders. And so kids in schools, they've learned about bullying, and they could tell you what a bystander is. And so the bystanders are the folks that are there watching the incident happen. Some of them might be feeling extremely uncomfortable with what they're watching. But when do they jump in? When do they learn to be actively participating in taking the stand of the victim? And so this is the utmost important thing that we're trying to do right now, especially at the Mental Health Foundation, is teach kids how to be active, good bystanders. Because if you've got a group of 10 people, and you've got a bully and you've got a victim, you have 8 kids that can make a difference to shut the bully down. And you can teach a victim all the lingo, what to say back to a bully. But ultimately, it's those 8 kids that can really make the difference. So why are we here? What we know is that with Matt's Safe School Law, we are being pushed as a state to reinforce and have policies within schools that are going to combat bullying. Well, the story of Matt, this is Matt Epling, and Matt was a great kid. He was an 8th grader at East Lansing Middle School. On his way to go to the high school, extremely involved, participated in a lot of different activities from student council to drama to music, very involved kid. Well-liked student, funny, he had a great sense of humor. And on the last day of school, Matt was ultimately emotionally and physically bullied at the bus stop. And there were a group of students from the high school that had a tradition that they would haze some of the students. Well, this hazing, this bullying, when Matt got home from school, he told his parents, and they basically said, do you want to do something about this? Do you want to make a change? And he said, yes, I do. And they called the police. And at that time, the East Lansing State Police didn't even quite understand the impact that bullying can have on a person's mental health, on a person's ability to how they're thinking, how they're acting, and how they're feeling. And that incident was humiliating to this young man. It brought on feelings of depression, and it brought on for him thoughts of suicide. And so Matt Epling chose to end his life. And so hence Mr. Epling, his father, took the stand that I'm going to change what's going on in the climate of our schools. So that's why we're here. That's why we're being pushed, because there are too many kids and adults being pushed over to want to actually take their lives from the actions that people have upon them. Okay? Next slide. So when we talk about cyberbullying, that's one form of bullying. There's a great video on Michigan.gov. If we have time at the end, we'll click on that one, okay? But I just wanted to get through this presentation. And I'll show you what we're showing students in classrooms to really drive home the message on how you treat someone has an effect on, and I'm going to keep repeating it, thinking, acting, and feeling on their mental health. So statistically, we know that 1 in 4 kids are bullied. 1 in 5 kids are the bullies. 1 in 10 are bystanders. And 56% of kids state that they're very uncomfortable with the way things are. And this is just when you ask kids, okay? And these are just surveys that happen. So we know what happens with the effects of bullying, and I'm just going to reiterate it. It has an effect on how you think. So when someone is bullied, it can bring about low self-esteem, I'm worthless. It can bring about thoughts of paranoia. And so you're constantly looking over your shoulder for the kid that pushed me in the hallway yesterday and his other friends. So it can make a student extremely paranoid. A kid can actually think about suicide. thoughts of I'm worthless, helpless, hopeless, this is never going to get better. It can bring about thoughts of hopelessness. It can bring about feelings of being misunderstood. And so maybe they have challenges at home that nobody understands about them. And then, of course, many times it can bring about thoughts of not being listened to, so being dismissed. And many times, a lot of times, students are, oh, that's okay, he's just being a boy, you need to deal with it. Those aren't the reactions anymore. Those are not what we can say anymore in this day and age. We cannot dismiss what kids are thinking. So we might even see actions, how they're acting. So bullying can bring about changes in someone's actions. They can be angry and aggressive. And so many times behaviors of anger and aggression are dismissed as they need an anger management class, when really what's going on behind that anger. They become unreasonable, isolative, and so they begin to isolate themselves, and they'll end up sitting at lunch tables by themselves, and they'll begin to be by themselves in the back of the classroom. They might bully others. A lot of times we do see this. And so the victim turns into the bully in order to retaliate and gain respect. They might not want to go to school. They act like they don't care about anything. And how they're feeling, it all goes back to embarrassment, humiliation, the feelings of sadness, fearful. They might even feel sick, physically sick, but also emotionally, psychologically sick. Lonely, and then many times anger. And we can not dismiss the anger. There's always something behind anger, and that could be a whole other session. More signs of somebody who might be bullied might be lost or destroyed clothing, books, electronics, jewelry, things come up missing. It might be because they were being bullied, they're being pushed, give me that, or I'll beat you up at the bus stop tonight. Frequent headaches, stomach aches, feeling sick or faking illness. So again, as teachers and educators, we need to be mindful of when kids are missing school. Is it the environment, or are they actually sick? Changes in eating habits, difficulty sleeping, or frequent nightmares. If they're having difficulty sleeping, they're coming to school exhausted. The bullying starts all over again. They go home. It's just a cycle. Declining grades, loss of interest in schoolwork, or not wanting to go to school. So a lot of it goes back to not being included in activities in groups in the classroom. Loss of friends, avoidance of social situations. Again, that could be all of a sudden they go from having a friend and suddenly they don't have any friends because they're being alienated because the bystanders are all siding with the bully, and the bully has gained control of the situation. Feelings of helplessness or decreased self-esteem. Self-destructive behaviors such as running away from home, harming themselves, or actually talking about suicide. And so talking about suicide is very serious. In a high percentage of cases, when people have completed suicide, they have put the message out there through either writing something, drawing it, speaking it, saying things like, I don't want to live anymore, or life isn't worth living, you're not going to miss me when I'm going to be around tomorrow. Another sign is giving things away. So when we talk about bullying, and this is where the Mental Health Foundation is extremely knowledgeable that we need to increase awareness about something that is so treatable, such as depression. Because ultimately what's going on behind bullying it and when it is affecting someone, actually there are signs of depression behind it. So in order to understand bullying and the effect it can have on someone, like when we looked at Matt Epling, which probably his parents never thought that he could ever have depression. He was a well-liked kid. He was involved. He had a lot going for him when he was going to get to high school. but how did he get to the point where he took his life? So, what we really need to do is many times there's a confusion about what is depression. And so we need to demystify the confusion about what it is. It's important that this type of presentation is out there not only for teachers, but it's also available to parents, grandparents, communities. It's huge. We need to teach kids how to recognize the signs of depression and suicide. We need parents, kids, to understand that how they treat people, again, has a direct impact on a person's mental health. And we need to show kids the appropriate action steps to take when to get help. And so when kids recognize that and understand that how you treat someone actually has a direct impact on how somebody thinks, how they act, and how they feel, then maybe we can stop negative behaviors. So, we love this brain scan, and this just shows you that depression is a medical, biological condition. And when we're teaching in class, so today, seriously, I just got done teaching 6 hours, back-to-back classrooms in Forest Hill Central High School to a health class. And so today, the first lesson, lesson 1, I will be there for 4 sessions, is stigma. And so what the first lesson talks about is understanding that a mental illness is actually a physical illness because it physically is affecting your brain. And your brain is part of your physical health. And so this shows you that one side is the healthy brain, and then what happens when somebody is depressed, the brain chemistry actually changes. And there is a lack of certain chemicals in the brain, and hence somebody needs to be treated. But because you can't see the illness and you can't necessarily know what's going on in someone's head, and so no one would have known that with Matt unless they really did ask him the questions of, how's that bullying making you feel? Geez, if I was being treated that way, if that would have happened to me, I would have felt humiliated. Do you feel humiliated? I mean, those are the kind of questions that need to be asked when somebody looks apparently like they are healthy, because what's going on in between there? Is it actually causing them depression? Are the chemicals in their brain changing? Is it something I should jump in and do something immediately? So what we know about depression is that exact causes are unknown, but we do know that genetics and environment both play a role in this. So genetically, if someone has any type of mental illness in their family, there's a chance that they could develop some type of mental illness in their lifetime, and hand in hand with diabetes, with cancer, and with other illnesses that are genetically passed on. We know that that is something that is there. So for me personally, my mom suffered from clinical depression, had treatment, spent time in an institution, in a mental health facility in town. And so I know that I have a predisposition I could. So I need to watch for warning signs. We know that environmentally it can have an effect. So right now, we're seeing a high incident rate of depression and of suicide because environmentally, right now we have financial crises going on. So is it because someone loses all their money and they're bankrupt that they took their life or became depressed? That was a stressor that caused the chemicals in the brain to decrease, and hence that person could have clinical depression. And so those are some of the things that happen. Poverty and stress increase your risk. We know that biological and emotional factors are part of the causes. So when we look at this slide, I like to preface it by telling everybody it's marked change in behavior 2 weeks or longer. So sometimes I'll flip this slide up when I'm doing presentations to parents, and all of a sudden they're gasping. Oh my gosh, I can see my kid, there's 10 things on that. Or me myself, sometimes I'll look at that and I'm going, oh my God, what's going on? So Many times when we look at depression, we think it's just an emotional illness, okay? 2 weeks or longer of a marked change in behavior, but there also is the physical components. So when you look at the physical side, a lot of those things are things that we end up at the doctor for, and the main question could be, what is going on in your life that could be behind these headaches, that you're not sleeping, that you have the chest pain? Is it stress? So also, even with the emotional side, for 2 weeks or longer are these things going on. So a lot of times when kids end up dying by suicide, and it could have been, sometimes it'll go back, oh, his girlfriend broke up with him. Well, what was going on probably was depressed mood, no pleasure in their life, preoccupation with negative thoughts. Maybe they couldn't sleep. So then they're irrational thinking. When you're not getting enough sleep, sometimes you're thinking irrationally, and negative thoughts are even more compounding. And so what we need to understand is that the underlying issue was depression that was going untreated. Okay, this was from another. We won't take a 10-minute break. Is that okay? Okay. So I like to put these up because many times people think that that a fact is that mental illness can't affect me. And so what we know is that it can affect anyone. You have a body, therefore you can develop a physical illness. You have emotions, so you can develop an emotional disorder. And so what we want everybody to understand is you can have a heart, so you could have a heart attack, and you have a brain, and I like to say you can have a brain attack. And so you don't know what might be the thing that does attack your brain, but we are all at risk, especially if we don't know how to cope and if we don't have great people and supports in our lives. There always is a chance that you could have a brain attack. A myth is that teens don't suffer from real mental illness. They are just moody. And so many times it goes back to our ignorance of just dismissing girls that, oh, it's her time of the month, or she's just moody, dismiss her. It actually could be a serious emotional disturbance, which we know affects 1 in 10 young people. Now, the shocking thing is that when you take these numbers, so today when I was presenting at Forest Hills, I just used 1,000 as my number. And so I threw out there, okay, you got 1,000 students in your school, and you got 1 in 10. So you've got 100 students that has an emotional disturbance at some point. Of those students, 80 students are not getting help. 20 are. And I usually like to applaud the kids that are the 20, because sometimes in a classroom you'll have the kids that are sitting there struggling, and they're getting help, but they don't want to talk about it. They don't want anybody to know. But those are the kids that I'm proud of, that somebody is helping them. Now, what are the 80 doing? We know that they are possibly bullying. They could be the bullied. They could be suffering, so their grades are declining. They could be the kids that are substance abusing, drinking and drugs. They could be the kids that are self-harming, so cutting, or suffering from an eating disorder. So what we know is that eating disorders only affect models and celebrities. And that, of course, is a myth. And the fact is that sometime in your teaching lives, you will come across teens that have eating disorders. Because we know that 3 to 5% of girls have a diagnosable eating disorder. Okay? They've routed the youngest person to be 9 years old. Boys account for 4 to 10% of the patients with eating disorders, which a lot of people are shocked about that. We know that eating disorders often coexist with other psychiatric problems. And there's so many things that coexist with depression and anxiety and substance abuse. So what we know is that eating disorders holds the highest mortality rate also. Here in Grand Rapids, we have one of the leading hospitals that treat eating disorders right here. It's called Forest View Hospital, known nationally as one of the top hospitals to treat this. Very complex, very, very complex. But we know that eating disorders need medical attention and psychiatric attention immediately. The just shake it off and get over it, you don't need help myth, we know it is. And we know for a fact that mental illnesses that are left untreated may lead to school failure, substance abuse, and possible suicide. We know that the fact is that early diagnosis and treatment result in accelerated recovery, and the brain is protected from further damage related to the course of the illness. So we know that many signs and symptoms of mental illnesses come in those high school years. And so as educators, we need to become more educated about what are signs and symptoms. I gave you the depression slide, which many times that can relate to other disorders also, such as bipolar illness. But understanding the complexity and understanding that, again, early treatment means recovery and hope for a future, as opposed to letting that person get sicker and sicker and sicker. And then by the time they get to college, they decide to try marijuana. They decide to start to drink. They decide that they want to do even harder drugs, which, if somebody already has a chemical imbalance, those drugs can be lethal to their brain. And you cannot imagine, I've been doing this mental health education for 7 years, and the amount of stories that we hear from parents who call us and ask, where can I get treatment for my son or daughter? We had to pull him out of the University of Michigan because he had a psychotic break. Okay, and a lot of times when they want to route it back, you cannot imagine how many times it leads back to the fact that they smoked pot. And they've done tons of research in England. We are not to that point here, but we do know that it has a negative effect on the brain, especially if somebody that has a predisposition for mental illness. Doctors are too busy treating physical illnesses to deal with mental health, and we know that the fact is that up to 1/2 of all visits to primary care physicians are due to conditions that are caused or exacerbated by mental illness. So again, many times it leads back to anxiety, depression, bipolar illness, that a lot of these physical ailments are coming on, and I might as well go see my primary care physician first. And so we're hoping to increase awareness in medical schools to make sure that doctors who are going to become primary care physicians, that they're knowledgeable about what the facts are about mental health, mental illness. Another myth, once mentally ill, always mentally ill. And what we know is that people with mental illness, and this is like any illness, so you're talking cancer, you're talking diabetes, they can recover. They can recover back to where they were with good treatment, and they can resume normal activities. And so I know firsthand that when my mom was clinically depressed, she did recover and resume her old activities. But she did that with the help of a doctor, with medicine, with therapy, with good treatment, and never forgetting that those were the key elements to her managing her illness. A myth, teens who claim to be depressed are weak and just need to pull themselves together. There's nothing anyone else can do to help. And again, we might say, yeah, Christy, that is such a myth. I mean, I know that stuff, but this is how serious it is. Sometimes we do dismiss it as just a weakness. And what we know is it's not a weakness. I'm hoping that by the end of my presentation, you're going to understand that it is a serious health disorder. Both young people and adults who are depressed need professional treatment. And again, we have trained therapists, we have counselors, we have people that can help folks learn more positive ways to think about themselves, change behaviors, cope with problems, or handle relationships. And so a lot of times it goes back to, again, those who are bullied. Is it affecting their mental health? Do they need professional counseling and a trained therapist to actually dive deeper and find out how can we change behaviors about how you think about yourself? Because it's not easy to arm the victims with these words to get back in somebody's face, because that takes a whole lot of courage. So, teens who claim depressed are weak. I think I did this one, right? Yeah, I gotta get rid of that. People, not that one. Okay, people who talk about suicide won't really do it. With this, what we know, almost everyone who dies by suicide has given some clue or warning. And so when we're in high schools right now, this is our main focus. It is a suicide prevention education program. It is to take into consideration warning signs that may make you feel uncomfortable about whether your friend is thinking about taking their life. And we need to drive it home that bullying has a direct effect on somebody, how somebody thinks, acts, and feels about themselves. What we know that we can't ignore statements like, you'll be sorry when I'm dead, I can't see any way out. No matter how casually or jokingly somebody might say that, and sometimes people always say that on Facebook. A message might be, I just want to die. Okay, is it something that I should be alerted by? Maybe I should actually click on and look further into their Facebook page. How were they last week? What's going on that might make them feel that way? And especially college students. Suicide is the third leading cause of death amongst high school students nationally. It right now is the second in Kent County. We're hoping we're going to change that number. We're looking for some stats to come out pretty soon. And we know that it is the second leading cause of death amongst college students. So what happens with college students is sometimes they're away from home. There's a lot of stress that happens. All of a sudden at 18, you're out the door and you're managing your life. And many times kids start to abuse substances. They're starting to fail classes because of that. And hence, again, those can be triggers for somebody to actually have depression and thoughts of killing themselves. And I'll tell you, there's nothing worse. We at the foundation get a phone call, and I'm going to be honest with you, once a week about someone who has lost someone to suicide. The effects of stigma. And so what we know is that the number one, and I'm wearing my shirt today because it was lesson 1 for the kids at Forest Hill Central High School. And we need to have a better understanding about what it is. We need to start talking about it. We need to start educating people. We need to start going out and spreading more awareness that it's much more common and that there is treatment and there is hope and that many of us in this room maybe have struggled, but we need to start talking about it. And so the biggest way we're going to do that is by increasing awareness and decreasing the stigma. That's getting rid of the stereotypical thought that we have of what a mentally ill person looks like. And when I do an activity with the high school students, we do a comparison of cancer against mental illness. And under mental illness, you get horrible words and labels. And what we want to do is to get people to understand that, like cancer, mental illness is a disease, and it can be treated, and people can live normal lives, and there's certain medications that help people, and that there's loved ones out there that they have too that want to support them. But what happens is because of stigma, because of the labels and because of the media, we're not knowledgeable on this. And so people don't go get help because I don't want to be grouped into that stereotypical group of what a mentally ill person is. So we know that the most damaging effect of stigma on mental illness is the unwillingness for people to go seek help. Because I'm not crazy, because I'm not nuts, because I'm not like that dude that went out and killed all those people out in Arizona. Because I'm not like Britney Spears who shaved her head and was on the cover of a magazine. Okay? Those are those stereotypical things that we see in and around on media, on television, everywhere. So we need to talk about it. We need to talk about what the risk factors are for suicide. And when you look at the list, the top thing is that depression and other mental disorders like substance abuse, more than 90% of people who die by suicide have these risks. So 9 out of 10 times the person had depression, clinical depression. Maybe they didn't want to go get help because of stigma. Maybe they didn't even know that that's what was going on, not understanding what this illness is. Stressful life events, such as bullying. So someone who is repeatedly bullied, but also has depression, okay, so is showing marked change in behavior, isolating themselves, maybe fighting, they're at risk, okay? So you got to combine those with my top category. So stressful events like a divorce, a death of a spouse, those are all top stressors. For kids, it could be senior year. Very high suicide rate in the month of May. Also in the month of October. First part of the marking period, kids are all escalated about doing good in school. Maybe they have depression. They get that first quarter report card. I can't show my parents this. Prior suicide attempt, so if they had attempted before, they're at risk, higher risk. They have a family history of someone who died by suicide or of depression. That there might be firearms in the home, that would be a risk factor. Combine that with somebody who's depressed. Incarceration, so if they're on their way to jail, they've been found guilty. A lot of that has to do with humiliation. I can't face going to prison. Exposure to others' suicidal behaviors. So exposure to watching someone take their life, or someone who has discovered the body of someone who has completed suicide. So many times, if you combine that with being a police officer and having to be a first responder on a scene, and then that person also might have depression, then they would be at risk. It also could be a whole student body who loses another student to suicide. It could be their students could be at risk. Again, changes in the brain chemistry. So, precipitating factors. We know that there is depression. There may be anger there. There's underlying anxiety, feeling hopeless, feeling worthlessness, lack of control over circumstances that they can't control. Can you grab me a water, please? Yeah. All of a sudden. So, thank you. How can parents reduce bullying? And again, this goes back to not only parents, but educators. What we can do is we can work on these skills. And so, of course, are kids born with these skills? I think many times kids that come to kindergarten may have the anxiety and may have the fear of being there for the first day. And how can we as educators pump up self-esteem? How can we help kids to make themselves feel better once they come in through the doors of a school every day? Because that is where they're going to spend 7 to 8 hours. Okay, from the time they leave their house, getting on the bus, getting to school, getting back on the bus and going home. So maybe at home they're being driven down and they're being made to feel like you're worthless. But when they go to school, those are the hours that can make the biggest impact and the biggest difference in a kid's life. And so how can teachers do that? How can we give kids the skills to be assertive? And again, a lot of it goes back to modeling assertive behavior at the school. Yeah, parents have a huge responsibility, but when kids go home, sometimes you don't even know what's going on at home. Social skills, of course, cooperation skills. in a classroom, making sure that kids have a friend. So they don't have to have a boatload of friends, but teaching kids how important it is to have one friend. Internal focus of control, and then of course the ability to, we want kids to be able to tell a teacher, be able to have a trusting relationship with the educators in the school. So, what we're doing in and around Kent County, and we're pretty excited about it, is we have a program that's called Be Nice. And I actually have my jacket here. I wore my shirt for another reason, but what we've created is we're trying to spread around awareness surrounding the issues of bullying, the importance of treating people with civility, that's community-wide, becoming aware, minimizing reduce the devastating effects of bullying, such as depression and suicide. And what we know is, we like the saying of, you can call it what you want. You know, you can call it respectful, you can call it courteous, polite, you can call it mindful, caring, nurturing, graceful, civil. But what it all adds up to is being nice. And it's really that simple, but it goes further. So what we want to see is that the schools, the workplace, greater communities exemplify principles of how we treat people, bringing it to an understanding to put an end to physical and emotional trauma caused by bullying. And so what we know is it all goes back to how we treat people has an effect on how they think, how they act, and how they feel. And so by instilling just 2 words and taking it serious, and being able for kids to use those words and understand that that's actually life-saving tools to be nice is huge. So what we're doing is, within schools, it's a positive anti-bullying initiative to create awareness. It is to understand that suicide, one of the devastating effects of bullying, that is a pure relationship, and it goes back to my beginning slides of why this is such an issue. And understanding that we're striving to show students, school districts, adults, communities, that how simply being nice is an effective way to promote a safe and civil environment. So again, many school districts want, and even here, we want you to talk about bullying. But what we need to start doing is we need to start doing a proactive approach. And almost that whole word bully has like, okay, everybody's talking about it, you know? It's just like, you know, when something gets old, oh, everybody's talking about it, you know? Oh, and now we're going to do something about it. Well, what we need to look at is why we're doing the work. Why are teachers being pushed to finally to do something, to take a stand? Because we know that this is causing kids to be depressed and to feel worthless and to feel like they don't have a place within their school. And what we understand that's different from what it was 25, 30 years ago is how much media attention and how kids are exposed to so many different kinds of bullying. We know this. We've learned over the years that ignoring bullies or just telling them to stop are negative and ineffective approaches to stopping bullying behaviors. We know that. When you tell somebody to stop doing something, they want to do it, okay? So don't speed anymore. Okay, give me a break. You know, you let go and you drive away, I'm going to speed, okay? Same thing with, I want you to stop drinking, okay? That person just isn't going to stop drinking. They need to understand what's going on behind the drinking. Why are they drinking? So what we know is what we need to do is we need to empower the students through involvement. We need to empower students to exemplify a basic theory of being nice. And so what the idea is that we got to start targeting the bystanders. And so what we're doing is our presentations. We've developed workshops where we go in, we give a similar presentation, but it's more kid-friendly. And we're going to show you this video in a moment that we show kids that is semi-disturbing, but we want kids to understand that how you treat people, and when you watch people being treated this way, that it actually can make someone really think and act and feel differently. And so we know, and we know from just people doing research on bullying, that the group of kids that are the bystanders are the people that we need to go after right now to help them to understand that it is not comfortable to watch someone get bullied. It is not fun. And they'll say that. And they'll identify how, when there's a bully, how it's safer to jump in behind the bully than to stand up to the bully. But they need to understand that the power of the numbers that are also watching this going on. So, the foundation of Be Nice is built upon the theory that everyone has ownership in their own behavior and a civil responsibility to encourage and include others. So what we do with students is we take the word nice and we break it down to make an acrostic because it's so easy that way. And so our nice, our N is to notice. Notice things about kids. Notice situations that are going on. Notice how you can change a situation. And again, that message is going out there to the bystanders. You're the ones that are going to be nice. You're going to notice. You're going to invite. You're going to invite kids to be part of things, to include them. You're going to invite them. You're going to understand how it feels not to be invited to participate. You're going to invite niceness. So you're going to invite the idea for everybody to change in the school. C, it's awesome. That is to challenge. It gets a little bit harder as the letters go on. Challenge yourself to be an active bystander. Challenge yourself not to participate in those things anymore. Challenge yourself to go notify someone that you're uncomfortable with what's going on and you don't like it. And then E, that's the best one, and I think that that's the major selling point of our program, why it's so cool, and that is empowerment. And so what the idea behind Be Nice is to empower your students to change the climate of their schools, because they don't want that going on anymore either. They don't. And so by empowering the students, they come up with the plan on how in their school they're going to bring and challenge the school to be nice. It's pretty awesome. So, what I want to do is I want to show that video. Cool. Are there any questions so far? No? Are you all from around Grand Rapids? Where are you from? Comstock Park. We're in that school district. Yeah, it's pretty cool. We just had a big, we met at the middle school, and so we introduced them to the Be Nice idea. And so now they have 40 students that are going to take the idea and implement it into their school. It's cool. Where are you from?
Haiti.
Where?
Haiti.
Haiti. I love it. Do they have bullying there?
Yeah, but it doesn't look like more like here.
Right,
It's
right.
less. They
Yeah,
did, you know,
yeah.
kids always a burden, but
You got
not
it.
too much.
And it is different, you know, and even, it's very interesting if I came back and did another presentation on suicide, it would be, you would see the disparity amongst cultural groups that go on with suicide. And so a lot of times in a country like Haiti, it's very family oriented, very close-knit community where people can talk to each other, and you have extended families. And I would think maybe there isn't a high suicide rate there, right?
No.
Not like the third leading cause of death, right? Where are you from?
Morley family.
Morley. Okay, you guys,
We had the kid who.
I know, and I actually met someone who shared that with me, and it goes back to, again, if you hear this kind of stuff, and sometimes It's so sad because after someone does die by suicide, and you'll notice that I'm not using the word committed suicide. I've not used that throughout my presentation because we're trying to get away from that terminology. Because the person that died did not commit a crime, did not commit a sin. And a lot of times when you say the word commit before something, it's,
Sound like they're
yeah,
that guy.
you got it. And so what we're saying is they died by suicide. There's another term, completed suicide. But I feel like they lost a battle with a very much of a struggle and an illness. So it's really big that we get up and educate. Okay, I'm going to show you this video. And this is something that we're sharing and showing to classrooms about, it's specifically for cyberbullying, but we feel like it's adequate to show when it encompasses all bullying. So we found that video, and we just thought it definitely hits home to have kids understand that by looking at those kids, you would never know what was going inside. And so they all had friends, and they all were well liked. They looked involved. But we know is that the power of how we treat people, and again, I'm just going to end it that way, is that it has an effect on how someone thinks, how they act, and how they feel. And so as much as you can tell someone that you have so much to live for, if they're not treated for a treatable illness such as depression, and asking questions, how are you feeling, and really meaning it, then we're not going to combat this big problem. So anyway, does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
How can you, if you could find a kid bullying another one, what you can do with the bullying?
Well, one thing is definitely not to embarrass either one in front of each other. I mean, that's the big thing, is you don't want to bring embarrassment because for some reason the bully is also being bullied, okay? So they need to be treated separately for who is the bully and the behavior, and parents need to be alerted. I mean, that's going to be part of the school policy, and you're going to have to understand that here in Michigan, everyone is going to have a different policy. You know, they're all going to be consistent, and then it has to go to the higher ups and has to be handled. And then in a classroom, I would make sure and talk to the child who is being bullied, and then also get the story and get the facts. And not in front of the kids, because everybody's going to try to defend the bully and take their side. And again, the victim is being re-victimized. But you know, and it is going to be school by school, and that's going to be the important thing. And I know that in each school, they're going to be providing bully training for faculty yearly. I mean, this is consistent. Their in-services are dedicated to what their policies are. Anybody else? All right.
Okay, Christy, thank you so
I thank you so much for allowing me to come today.
much for information. And we here at Grand Rapids Community College are very friendly people, and we like chocolate.
I love
You have a
it.
Teachers of Tomorrow cup
Girl, wow, that is so nice.
with chocolate.
I love it.
We
This
thank
is
you so
great.
much. Can we give Christy a hand, please?
Thank you. Oh, yay. All
We're
right.
not going to trap you here. You can get out of the park.
Alice parking.